Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for a special program on research with the Witkin State Law Library with Garrett Shields and Elena Smith. My name is Kimberly Sims, and I am the host of today's event. I'm a reference librarian in the Witkin State Law Library of the California State Library. We also have a co-host today, Vanessa Chrisman, who is the head of both the law and government publications sections. Vanessa will be monitoring our Q&A section throughout the talk for any questions you may have for Garrett and Elena, and she will read your questions during our Q&A session at the end of the presentation. This program would not be possible without the support of the California State Library Foundation, for which we are eternally grateful. To learn more about the foundation, you can visit their website at cslfdn.org. Before I go any farther into our program introduction, I also want to acknowledge that I work on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Nisenan and Miwok peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. As such, I am a guest on this land, and I want to acknowledge, thank, and honor my hosts. The California State Library is thrilled to have the opportunity to share legal research tips and tricks with you today. It promises to be an exciting and interesting talk. To make sure that you have the best experience possible, I am going to go over a few technical housekeeping details, and then we will get into the presentation. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the Q&A section, and we will answer them at the end of the program during our Q&A session. This presentation will be recorded and made available after the talk. Live transcription is enabled, so if you'd like to see captions, click the CC icon to show subtitles. If you run into any technical difficulties during the presentation, please put those in the Q&A section, and we will try to help you if we can. We have emailed you a handout of research links to accompany this presentation. We encourage you to open it now and follow along during the presentation. We've added links related to the California State Library in the chat window. For any state employees without a library card, please consider applying for one through the posted online application link, and don't forget to register for one of the state library's many other speaker programs. Now that housekeeping is out of the way, let's get to the main event. Garrett Shields is the senior librarian for the Witkin State Law Library with over 8 years of experience, specializing in California legislative and regulatory research. Prior to working as a law librarian, he worked as a public reference librarian and in the government publications section of the California State Library. He enjoys assisting library patients looking for a needle in a legal haystack and helping them navigate the varied and voluminous publications relating to California's legal history. Elena Smith is a reference and outreach librarian for the Witkin State Law Library and a premier collection of legal materials. In addition to over a year and a half of experience as a law librarian, she has over a decade of experience helping patrons with their research in a wide variety of local libraries and archives. Her professional passions include historic California law and public access to legal resources. Please join me in welcoming Garrett and Elena.
Thank you so much for that fabulous introduction, Kim. Today, as Kim mentioned, Garrett and I will be talking with you about how to do research with the Witkin State Law Library. Before I do so, however, if I do need to give you a brief intro to the State Library as a whole. The State Library was founded in 1850. It actually predates the state by a few months, but it was founded by statute in 1850. We're celebrating our 175th anniversary. It consists of 6 public service sections. The Witkin State Law Library, government publications, and information services are all on 914 Capitol Mall, where we are. At 900 N Street, there's the Braille and Talking Book Library, as well as the California History section. And then in San Francisco, there is our San Francisco branch, the Sutro Library. Before I go on too much further, though, I do want to offer a few points of clarification. First, this is not an MCLE. There's been a wild rumor going around that this is a program that's being offered for MCLE credit. It is not. I do want to respect your time. So if you are here because you are hoping for an MCLE credit, go enjoy your lunch. You can catch the recording if you want to later on, or you can hang out on this call. That's fine. But just know that we won't be offering an MCLE credit for this at the end. Another point of clarification, we are not lawyers and we are also not the state archives. What this means, practically speaking, is that we provide access to legal materials. We don't offer legal advice. And the materials that we provide access to are going to be published materials. So things like your chaptered laws, not necessarily the files where the governor is, as far as documentation, the governor took into consideration when he was considering signing those laws. That would be at the state archives. Now that I've gone over that, I do want to give you a little bit of background on the Witkin State Law Library's services and our ongoing projects. Our main focus is to help you have access to legal materials. We offer full on-site access to everyone. It does not matter who you are. If you come through our doors, we are happy to pull any of our legal resources for you to use and view. We also prioritize remote access wherever possible. We know it's a big state and that many people would have difficulty coming into Sacramento. So where it's possible, it sometimes isn't, but wherever it's possible, we really do try to prioritize getting you access to things remotely where we can. As that might indicate, we are also very involved as far as providing research assistance. We do this remotely, both by email and by phone. Email is definitely preferred. And we also do this in person at the library. In addition to that, we offer a great deal of general legal education. This is going to take the form of library tours, which we offer to small groups of about 6 or 10, most 6 to 15 actually, mostly to state employees, but we have had some other groups as well. We also offer webinars on popular legal topics. Last year, this included a webinar on AI, another one on CEQA and NEPA regulations, and still another on public health law. We also offer research trainings such as this one. At this point, definitely pull up the PDF that got shared with you in this chat with links to the various online resources we're going to refer to throughout the rest of this talk. It was also emailed to you. And I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about our ongoing projects and then turn it over to Garrett. So as far as ongoing projects that we are running, we are, like I said, actively working on ways to help you access legal materials. So that's going to include in-depth video tutorials. Those are coming out very, very soon on resources that anyone can access, just common legal research tools. We're also creating a great deal of library pathfinders that will be forthcoming shortly. And in addition to all of that, this part is funding dependent. We are actively working on digitizing a huge amount of our unique materials. These are going to include AG opinions, bill versions, assembly file analyses, register supplements, notice registers, published briefs. For the librarians on this call, this number is important. It's 2,000 linear feet, roughly speaking. It's a lot of material. So definitely keep your fingers crossed for us. We want to be able to provide more remote access to you guys in the future. And now I'm going to turn this presentation over to Garrett. Garrett, take it away.
Thank you, Elena. I'm going to start talking about some of the materials that we'll be discussing today. We're going to be focused on California law. It's our greatest strength. We have a huge collection of current and historic primary law, self-help materials, practice guides, and legal treatises, both current and historical. And we'll also touch on some subscription database access. After we spend some significant time there, we'll touch on federal law, other state and international law. The rest of the presentation, we're going to go over California primary law, really focusing on a few different subjects. We'll go through how to perform legislative history and intent research, regulatory history and intent research, finding California case law, and attorney general opinions. For other laws, we're going to do a little bit of a surface skim. We'll touch on different federal resources and some other state and international resources. Once I've done that, I'll turn things back over to Elena, who will guide you through searching for secondary sources, navigating our catalog, and then performing a research test drive where she'll synthesize kind of what we've gone over today and put it together in one project. Let's start focusing on California primary law and the access that we can offer you to different materials here at the library and available online to researchers who can't make it in. For legislative materials, you're going to be delighted that a lot of it is available online. We're going to highlight access to bill versions as those are frequently requested. We'll move in to talk about some regulatory materials that we offer. These are going to be more focused on-site, as many of the materials are only available in hard copy still, and we'll highlight the register supplements and the research you can do there. And finally, we'll talk about some different judicial materials, of which there is a collection of things on site and available remotely, but you're going to have to pick and choose between what's available. We'll highlight the published briefs and the Attorney General opinions. Let's get started with legislative history research. It's far and away the most requested subject of research here at the Law Library. To that end, we do have an online research guide on our website, and we do have upcoming video demos that Elena mentioned earlier. Additionally, online materials consist of bill versions for many 20th century bills available via HathiTrust. The Chief Clerk of the Assembly Archives has a collection of statutes and more dating back to 1850. The archived and current California legislative information websites are essentially one-stop shops for legislative materials from 1995 forward. And then the Statutes to Bill database is something that we've developed here at the library and host on our website to help people find a correlating bill number to a statute number they may already have, or vice versa. These materials are all on the handout that's linked in the chat and sent to you via email. For materials that are available on site, we offer annotated codes dating back to 1872. We offer Westlaw database access via our patron PCs. This is only an on-site resource though. We also have assembly file analyses back to 1975 and legislative bill versions dating back to 1867. In rare cases, we also do have published committee reports that have found their way into the government publications section, but this is a very small percentage of bills that have these sort of published reports. If you are looking for more documentation after you perform research with us, we do suggest folks contact the California State Archives, as they have a collection of governor's chaptered bill files dating back to 1943, which have unpublished materials such as letters of support or opposition or memos, things like that, that may have been included and filed with the archives. Okay, let's take a look at this chart here, which does a few things. On the right side of it, you'll see that materials are labeled as on-site or online. And the things with the blue bars here are available online. A lot of this research can be done remotely, thankfully. The white bars are things that can only be done on-site. And for some collections, there's even a workaround there. The left side of this chart here is basically the steps of how you can perform legislative history and intent research with the materials available to you. And I'll walk you through those real quick. If you have a citation to a California code section and you are curious how it read in the past, or you want to know why it was written a certain way, that's a good place to begin your research. With a code citation, all you'll need to do is find the complete history for that code section. You can consult print annotated code books, which we have on site from 1872 to current day. Or also on site, you can consult the Westlaw database, where you can also find a complete history for those code sections. In those histories, what you're going to find are lists of the chapter laws or the statutes that added and amended that code section. If you would like to take a look at these statutes, you can find them in a few different places. The Chief Clerk of the Assembly Archives has all the statutes available back to 1850. These are scanned versions of the printed volumes that have been made available historically. If you are researching more recent law, the archived or current California legislative information websites are, like I said before, one-stop shops. They'll have the statutes, the chapter laws. They'll also have the bills and the bill file analyses as well. But say you're researching something older and you've now found the statutes from the Chief Clerk of the Assembly Archives, you may want to find the bills as well. The different bill versions will allow you to see how a piece of legislation changed throughout the course of its life before being chaptered into law. It gives you some idea of the intent. There's a legislative council digest preceding each bill version that kind of explains what it's about and what it's trying to do. To find those bill versions, you're going to need a number for the bill. Those don't correlate to the statute number. To find this information, for older bills, if you are already at the Chief Clerk of the Assembly Archives site, because those are scanned versions of the statutes, at the beginning of each of those volumes, there's what's called a table of laws enacted, which will have a list of all the current, of all the numbered statutes for that year with the correlating bill number. If you don't want to look through all those volumes, you can go to our website where we have a tool that helps you convert the statute number to the bill number or vice versa. With the bill version, or sorry, with the bill number, you just need to track down the bill versions. If you're on site, this is pretty simple. We've got a collection of print bill versions dating back to 1867. Prior to that, you're going to have to consult the archives, and it's going to be handwritten copies. If you're looking for information on bills throughout the 20th century, though, you can see from this chart that there are gaps, but a lot of bills are available online. HathiTrust has many of these digitized and available, and there's a link to a spreadsheet containing all these bills on the handout that we've provided. And if you're looking for more recent legislation, the California legislative information websites are available to you as well. Finally, after looking at the bill versions, you may still be wanting a little bit more in regards to intent. From here, you're going to want to consult the bill file analyses. These are created every time a bill is sent to a committee. There's going to be a summary, a fiscal analysis, perhaps a list of who supports and opposes a bill, and some further discussion. We have these bill file analyses dating back to 1975, but as it's not a widely disseminated publication, it's an incomplete collection for us. Again, more recent bill analyses are available via the California Legislative Information website. But if you're looking for anything from 1975 to 1995, it's worth checking with us first. Prior to that, like I said earlier, the archives has this information and more in their governor's chapter bill files. So that's an overview of our collection of legislative materials. Let's get into some of the regulatory materials. We have research guides available on our website, including some upcoming online or upcoming video demos. Online resources available to people remotely include information from the Office of Administrative Law. There are the current California Code of Regulations available via Westlaw. and their contract with the Office of Administrative Law. And there's also an archived version of the OAL website done through the Internet Archive's Archive It program. On-site resources include a full collection of register supplements and notice registers. If you're looking for information beyond this, we suggest people contact the California State Archives or the individual agencies themselves. There was a law passed, I believe it went into effect in 1981, that required either the agency to keep what's known as the complete rulemaking file, which is all the correspondence between the agency and the OAL. And if they don't keep it, they're required to submit it to the state archives. If you're looking for regulatory materials prior to when that law went into effect, there's still a good chance you're going to find what you're looking for. It just may be a bit more complicated. All right, and let's take a look at this chart kind of outlining what is available to you for regulatory research. First, you're going to want a citation to the regulation so that you can find the history of the regulation. To do that, you can consult our print collection on site or our microfiche collection. You can consult the Westlaw available via the patron PCs. Or if you're accessing this material remotely, you can look at the current California Code of Regulations made available by Westlaw. If you are accessing this information remotely, know that only the current regulations are freely available to you. If you're on site, you can look at annual snapshots dating back to 1980, which is useful if you're looking into the history and intent of a regulation that may have already been repealed. As you look at each regulation, there's going to be a history section that will list all the different changes to that regulation. Those citations are going to refer to the register supplements. The regulations are published a bit differently than chaptered laws, which are issued once a year in an annual edition. The regulations are updated weekly and are issued as what are known as register supplements, which only contain the changes to the body of the California Code of Regulations. We have a collection of these supplements dating back to 1945, which covers the entire run since the California Administrative Code was established. These are only available on site, and this is a truly unique collection. So if you're doing regulatory history and intent research, you may want to find a way to get down to the library. In addition to the register supplements, we also have a complete collection of what's known as the Notice Register. The Notice Register is a publication that is also published weekly, and anytime a regulation is proposed to be changed, a notice essentially has to go out weeks or months ahead of time, and it appears in this publication. Now, what you may find here varies from publication to publication. Sometimes in the notice registers, you'll just see a listing of contact information at an agency and a notice that they are looking to change the regulations. Very, very vague language. Sometimes you'll get draft language of the regulations themselves. So it is worth a look through these. As I said, we have a complete collection of these. The notice registers began in 1979. If you consult the current Office of Administrative Law website, they have these from 2018 to current day. And if you use the archived version of their website as part of that Archive It program, you can find versions back to 2002. All right, and that covers a lot of California legislative and regulatory law. We also get frequent requests for case law. If you are looking into any sort of California appellate or Supreme Court case, there are a lot of online resources for you to consult. Lexis offers the official California Reports public access website. There's also additional California court website resources and Google Scholar, which is easy to search for people familiar with simple Google searches. On site, we have a collection of published opinions available via database and in paper, and we also have a huge collection of briefs. We are one of 4 repositories for appellate and Supreme Court briefs in California, so we have a massive collection of these. If you are looking for court resources from superior courts, we typically advise people to begin their searches at those courts. We don't actively collect that information, and we can help you track down what court contact you should pursue, but we won't have much available here. Okay, and let's take a look at what resources are available to perform case law research. Most people come to us with a citation about a particular case. If you don't have that, you're performing some exploratory research. You can consult our collection of treatises on site, or check out CEB OnLaw or Westlaw. These databases are available on site, and just doing simple keyword searches will return more citations to case law than you could search in a day or a year at the library, probably. With a citation to a case, the most basic thing you may want to view is the opinion. As I stated before, Lexis is the official provider of the California Reports public access website. And with that, you can look at appellate and Supreme Court cases dating all the way back to 1850. This is available freely to anyone online. There are other resources. Hein Online is a database available to state employees with remote access. They can access similar materials there. And opinions are also available via Google Scholar or Court Listener. For additional information, the state court's website has docket information available for appellate and Supreme Court cases from 1996 forward. The dockets are useful because you can see what was filed and when. It's a nice timeline of the case. It identifies key parties in the cases and can be useful in your research. What we really specialize in for case law research is our collection of briefs. As I mentioned before, we're one of 4 repositories for appellate and Supreme Court briefs. The collection is so vast that we recommend, if you're researching case law prior to 1970, to start your research as soon as possible. Our briefs prior to 1970 are held off-site, so we need to contact the location off-site, request the materials, wait for them to be pulled and processed and shipped to us, where we can then receive them and process them and get them to you. This can take a couple of weeks, frankly. So don't start your research on a Friday hoping to have something on a Monday. If you're looking for more recent briefs from 1970 forward, we do have those here on site available in microfiche. And for more recent briefs from 1996 forward, there is an online portal. It's only accessible on site here because we're one of the 4 repositories. This is a service that at one point in the past was available more widely. Unfortunately, now due to licensing restrictions, it's only available on site. We also get requests for Attorney General opinions quite frequently. If you're performing Attorney General opinion research online, there's a good amount of resources available from the Department of Justice website, but on site we have the published opinions available via database access and in paper and on microfilm. Again, most people come to us with a citation to an Attorney General opinion already in hand, but you can also find those in our treatises or the databases available on site. With a citation to an Attorney General opinion, if you're a state employee, you can access Attorney General opinions dating back to 1943 if you've got a library card with us. If you are here in the library, you have access to that same resource, Hein Online, but you can also research Attorney General opinions back to 1899. 1943 represents a starting point in a collection. There's a volume 1 from 1943, so people assume that's where it starts. Prior to that, in the collection we have on film, they are scans of loose mimeographed papers. So the collection is a little bit more difficult to use. It's on microfilm. It's not indexed in the same way, but we do have a large collection of these early Attorney General opinions that are hard to find. If you are accessing opinions offsite, you can also check the California Department of Justice website. They've got opinions from 1979 forward, freely accessible to anyone. That covers a ton of California legal research and a lot of what we regularly get asked. Less frequently, we've been asked about federal laws. We do have a massive collection of federal materials. The California State Library is a regional depository for the Federal Depository Library Program. Because of that, we have received all sorts of federal materials over our lifetime. If you're doing federal law research and you're looking into legislation, current research is widely accessible online. On site, we do have annotated codes, both current and historic, and we also have database access to things like Hein Online and Westlaw to help you research further. For regulatory research, again, most current publications are available online, the Federal Register, the Code of Federal Regulations, and even some historic materials available online. But we will have even older things here available at the library or available via database access. Similarly, judicial opinions and attorney general opinions, the current stuff will be available online or accessible via database here on site. Something that we've been getting more of are research requests pertaining to legislation or case law for other states. Current research regarding current state legislative materials can be done online via database or on site via things like Westlaw. Older materials, we have a large collection in paper before database access was the preferred method. We don't currently collect physical materials pertaining to out-of-state laws, but we do have a large collection of older materials. And again, judicial opinions and attorney general opinions for other states are largely available online or accessible via database, such as Westlaw in our reading room. The most common question we get regarding out-of-state laws is how did a specific law appear during a specific period? Essentially, we're performing legislative history and intent research out of state. So that's going to look pretty similar. Generally, you'll need to use databases available to you because, again, we don't have a large current collection pertaining to out-of-state laws. And it's a multi-step process in maybe ways you won't expect. To start the research, you would find the current law, you'd find the code section history in the annotated codes. You can consult Westlaw to do this, or our physical collection of annotated codes for older materials. And you'll also want to keep an eye on what the law governing effective dates for legislation out of state is. Here in California, we know to expect new laws to go into effect on January 1st, but that's not all laws in California. There are many exceptions. And the law that determines this, it is in our California Constitution. Other states, it may be in their constitution, it may be a chaptered law, it's something that you'll want to ascertain. Once you have a complete history for the section you're interested in, say you wanted to find how a code existed in Oregon in 1995, and you're looking at the history, and there was an amendment in 1993, and then something in 1996. You can feel pretty confident looking at that 1993 statute and knowing that was the law in 1995. But say the history showed amendments in 93, 94, 95, and 96. For thoroughness, you may want to look at a few of these amendments and then be extra sure when these laws go into effect. Also keep in mind that the law governing effective dates out of state may have changed depending on the period that you are investigating. If you're looking into the 1960s, it's not enough to know what the current law governing effective dates is. You'll need to know what it was in 1960. In addition to out-of-state resources, we also have international resources. Some collection highlights include mining law, early English, Mexican, or Spanish law that affects current California law, space law. We've got documents on treaties and high-profile trials and much more. To find these resources, you would have to search our library catalog. With that, I'm going to turn things over to Elena to help you explore some of these resources.
Thank you so much, Garrett, for that fabulous overview. Okay, folks, as mentioned, we're going to discuss other ways of access, other things you can access, and I also want to touch on as far as international law and secondary resources, looking at things like the library catalog. We'll also discuss databases in our library alone, and definitely how to ask a question. So why would you need to search our catalog? We've gone over a lot of different things as far as legal research, a lot of the commonly asked questions. We'll say you're not quite there yet as far as tracing a legislative history, or you want to see what's available as far as those international resources. For this, the library catalog is where you're going to need to go. One common question we get with the library catalog is, do I need to sign in? Do I need to have a library card to use it? And the answer is no, you really don't. It's a list of resources that we have available to you and that you will need to probably talk with us about getting access to in another way. One thing I would emphasize with you guys, though, is definitely try to limit your searches down to what's available at the Witkin State Law Library if you're doing legal research. If you're looking for things like Witkin summaries and so forth, you don't need to look in the government publications section and information services and California history, because all of those are listed in the catalog. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and look at the resources that we have here. Just do a quick search. You might want to check for something like recycling. Go ahead and do a basic search. And then at this point, go ahead and narrow by title, right? Or narrow by library. So to do that, there's going to be an option on the left-hand side of your screen that includes narrow by library. If you're using a mobile app, it's going to be the little funnel up top your search results. Click down, select narrow by library, select Witkin State Law Library, and that will get you there. You can add to just law collection materials. You can then select a title that looks like it might be of interest to you. And at that point, it's time to have a conversation about how to access the item. If you're in Sacramento, you might just want to email us and say, could you pull this item so I can come look at it? And we're happy to do that for you. If you're from out of town and you know specifically what you want out of that book, it's a narrow portion of the book, just a couple pages, a small handful of pages. feel free to email us. We are happy to explore copying options. If it's a larger set of materials, we're also happy to brainstorm access options with you, as far as maybe this might be an interlibrary loan for you, or it might be something where we start looking at alternative libraries that hold this item, or another method of accessing things. Okay, speaking of research and materials that you can access, I also want to go over our databases. I've divided this out into databases, how to access databases if you're a state employee versus how to access databases if you're a member of the general public, because it does vary. If you are a state employee, you have access to a number of legal databases through us. This includes Hein Online, which you can access remotely with your library card, and CEB OnLaw and Westlaw, which you can access on site. One common question we get is, can I access these databases remotely? Why can't I access CEB OnLaw and Westlaw remotely? And the answer is, that's how our contract is structured, and it's unfortunately out of our hands. But we are happy to provide you with on-site access to those. And like I said, to brainstorm alternative options with you. You can also see our other databases that are available on our online resources page, which is listed on your handout. And I recommend you take a scroll through and see all of what's available, because we offer a lot of good stuff, just generally speaking, that might be of interest to you. Everything from Sanborn maps and newspapers to science publications. You can also narrow things down just to laws and regulations and see a curated list of resources that might be useful to you. Some of them are freely accessible. Some of them are like these databases, things that you could potentially access on site or via your library card. If you hit trouble at any point, just go ahead and drop us a line. Email csllaw@library.ca.gov or use our Ask a Librarian service. Okay. For the general public, you have the same access that state employees have. You're no different. The only difference is that you need to access those materials on site. Again, that's down to how our contracts are structured and a little out of our control. That being said, you can see a full list of what's available to you via our online resources page, and you can go ahead and see what might be available on site that way. You can also see a curated list of, like I said, freely accessible resources. If you just want quick links that have been vetted by our librarians for law and regulation research, check and see. And again, we are rabid researchers. We love this stuff, and we love coming alongside and helping you find a way to access materials. So if you have something specific you're after, don't be shy about reaching out to us, because even if we can't provide access via a standard method, we could maybe brainstorm, okay, might this be available through interlibrary loan? Is there a local county law library that you could go to get access? There are many options for you, and we really want to assist you in getting access to the materials that you need. Okay, speaking of getting access to materials, let's talk interlibrary loan. For state employees, this is where you need to sign into our catalog. Okay, go ahead and use your library card number and do that. Let's assume that you've exhausted your search options. You've checked our catalog, you've checked our databases. We just don't have what you're after. Go ahead and do your search again. This time though, click search outside the library. It's going to be an option up near the top of your screen after you've signed in. And this will take you to another very similar screen that will list not only items that the state library has, but items that libraries throughout the United States have. And then go ahead, select your item, fill out a very short request form, and send it in. That form is going to go to our interlibrary loan staff. Picture us playing a gigantic game of Go Fish with libraries throughout the United States. Do you have this item? Are you willing to lend it? Do you have this item? Are you willing to lend it? Do you have this item? Are you willing to lend it? It's kind of fun, actually. Our library staff is very, very good at playing Go Fish for you, and we're happy to do it. That being said, we do occasionally lose the game, so just be prepared. We may not be able to get it for you. We will certainly try, though. For the general public, you also have access to interlibrary loan. You're just going to need to probably go through your local library. Most public libraries in California have some form of resource sharing program that they offer. It can be called many things. It could be called interlibrary loan. It could be called Rapido. There's any number of names that these programs go under. Go ahead and talk with your local library. Ask them about their process, their procedures, and follow the procedures and make a request. Be aware that each library system is essentially an island as far as how they go, as far as their procedures, and that services really vary, usually based on funding. So if your local library can't come through your county library, go to the next county over and try over there. I have 5 library cards specifically for this kind of situation where I'm looking for something and I need to access options via multiple systems. Okay, that being said, if you run into difficulties at any point, that's what we're here for. Feel free to ask us. You can use our Ask a Librarian function on our homepage. It's the question mark on the upper right hand side of your screen. We strongly encourage that because that's seen by your question is seen by specialists of various sorts: government publications, history, database specialists, and law specialists. And we sort out the questions based on who's best equipped to answer them with their collections and knowledge. You can also email us directly, again, at csllaw@library.ca.gov. And we do have a phone number if you want to call us. We strongly prefer email. Okay, so now that I've gone over some of our common ways of accessing material via searching our catalog and databases, and Garrett's gone over many of the common types of questions we handle and how to do that sort of research, I thought I'd take you on a bit of a research test drive. This is where I start feeling a bit like a salesperson, and show you how all of this fits together. I knew that there would be a lot of government employees on this call, and I didn't want to play favorites with any particular agency. So I thought we should focus on something that applies to every state agency, the Library Distribution Act. By law, you're supposed to be submitting your publications to us. If you want more details on this particular law and how to submit documents, please feel free to check out the California State Documents Collection and Depository Library Program. The URL is on your handout. Within the Library Distribution Act as a whole, I focused in on Government Code Section 14901. This particular code section appears to be dealing with things like web archiving, how many copies of a document the state printer should be printing for distribution to libraries, and the role of actually the state archivist in all this. So kind of interesting. I was on site, so my first step here was, okay, well, what's the history of Code Section 14901? So I pulled an annotated code, and I found a nice long history. It actually became law in 1945. At the time, it was Government Code Section 13661, and it underwent many amendments over the years. I didn't list them all. There were a slew of them, and I've listed 12 amendments here. So that's going to give us a lot of scope for legislative history and intent research. Before I do that, though, I was thinking it might be good to zoom out a little and get a sense of how this particular code section fits into the general context of law, and particularly library law and government publications law in California. So I went to our catalog and I started looking for secondary legal resources specific to government documents. I searched a couple of ways. I searched Library Laws, California. I searched Library Distribution Act. I searched government agencies. I don't recommend that final search. That was a very unfortunate search decision. And I found a lot. With the first search, I actually found a publication titled California Library Laws. And this publication is put out by the Witkin State Law Library. It's a compilation of all of the laws that affect California libraries, all of the California laws that affect California libraries that we do each year. And so I found an older one. The current one is on our website. This might help me figure out how Section 14901 fits into the overall corpus of laws that affect libraries throughout California. I also found a document that might be interesting as far as giving me a sense of government publications generally and methods of accessing them. This was the California Public Records Act and Information Practices Act Compendium. So completely different from the Library Distribution Act, but again, dealing with access to government documents. So again, just an interesting thing to look at and maybe think about. Okay, let's go ahead and talk legislative history. I am not going to go through all 12 of those amendments with you today. You have things you want to do this afternoon, so do I. So I selected one of these to go through with you. And that one is a statute from 1976. It's chapter 1038. And to do this, I could consult our legislative history research guide, or obviously that chart that Garrett went through. We're actually going to walk verbally through the steps with that chart. This is a pre-1995 law. So that means our steps are going to be a little bit more complicated than it would be if this law were passed after 1995. So my first step is, what did it read like? So for that, I went to the Assembly website and I scrolled down to 1976. I clicked on the chaptered laws, the statutes and amendments to the codes. I then went in and I clicked on the appropriate chapter range, opened up the PDF and scrolled down to 1038 and read the text of the law at that time. It was kind of a non-event. Basically, it gave me a sense of, okay, this is how many copies the state printing office is supposed to be making available to libraries in California. Why did we amend this again? It's like, okay, so that was where the intent came in. To do this, my next step was to convert that chaptered law into a bill number. I used our statutes to bills tool and found out that this bill was AB 3539. From there, it was go to the Happy Trust spreadsheet. I scrolled down to 1976, selected the right volume with the volume with the correct range of bills, scrolled down and found AB 3539. There were multiple different versions of this as it went through the legislature. And reading through these, I kind of started getting a sense of what was going on. From what I was able to see, it looked like the question was a little bit, well, who's responsible for submitting that list to the state publisher to print those extra copies? And they had decided to transfer that responsibility to the state library. They also transferred a little bit of funding at the same time to do the extra work, which was very nice. At this point, I could go ahead and look at the assembly file analyses and see what's available there. I did not choose to pursue it at this point. I'm not researching this heavily for a case or anything like that. So I'm feeling satisfied. So I moved on. For later laws, this would be much easier because it's one-stop shopping. So I could look at the archived LegInfo website or the current LegInfo website and pull in all of this stuff very easily right away. And those are freely accessible online. I then chose to zoom out again, for I was particularly interested in seeing if there were any AG opinions or alternatively, legal periodical articles related to the Library Distribution Act. So I went on to Hein Online. I assume many of you are familiar with Westlaw, so I didn't worry about that. Went on to Hein Online and I searched Library Distribution Act, very simple. And I started pulling things out. This included contextual articles like SCC LL News from 2008 and Documents to the People from 1992. Both of these articles were talking about the Library Distribution Act, why it's important both to the public and to state agencies, and how to submit documents. It was actually pretty funny in SCC LL News. One of my colleagues over in Government Publications was giving information in this article about the act and how to submit documents. I really need to tease him about that later. I also searched for AG opinions related to the Library Distribution Act. I didn't find much. There was nothing. I did find some opinions on the California that mentioned the California State Library generally, but nothing on this particular code section. Okay, as many of you know, in general, regulations are dependent on laws for their force and authority. So I was sort of wondering, okay, are there any regulations related to Government Code 14901? Let's see. So I went onto the Office of Administrative Law website and did a search. I just searched for 14901. It allows you the keyword search. So I searched by the code section. Didn't see anything. Didn't see anything for government publication either. Well, nothing relevant anyways. A search for California State Library, however, did reveal something that, while not specific to the Library Distribution Act, was important as far as providing some context, and that is our library's use policies. And basically, what Title V CCR 20004 says is that the library's materials are available for anyone and everyone to use. Just don't damage them, is the thrust of that particular regulation. Its history is incredibly short. It was promulgated in 1982, Register Supplement number 19, and has not been amended since. So if I really wanted to verify that the language that I just saw on the OAL website is the exact same as the language in Register Supplement 19, I could go pull that Register Supplement and read them side by side. I don't think I need to. I'm pretty sure I can trust the OAL website. I could also see if there is anything in the terms of intent as far as the notice registers that is available on site. This felt a little bit tangential to my research, so I chose to move on at this point. My final search with this was case law. We're emphasizing resources that anyone can access. So I went on to Google Scholar and I started searching to see if there were any lawsuits citing the Library Distribution Act or Code Section 14901, just to see. I did a ton of searching. I couldn't find a thing. It turns out that the state library just is not that litigious. We're thrilled if you send us your documents, but if you don't, we're not going to come after you. What I did find that was really interesting, though, and really emphasized the importance of the Library Distribution Act, was this opinion. It's Robinson versus the Fair Employment and Housing Commission, and it was a California Supreme Court case in the 90s. And it looked like the case seemed to be about the definition of 5 employees. And Robinson was arguing that, well, it's not 5 employees total, it's 5 employees on site and all of this. So the opinion that got handed down first went into the intent behind the 5 employee law. And it also cited a document that is held at the California State Library. This document was issued by the Fair Employment and Housing Commission in 1961 and was probably collected under the Library Distribution Act. And it too talked about what 5 employees means. So the case didn't turn on this particular government publication, but it was definitely strengthened by it. So the moral of this story is send us your documents. You will thank yourself in 30 years when you get sued. We are doing a law presentation though, so I should also point out that if you want to look at this case further, we do have 3 published briefs on file that you can look at. So I have gone over a lot, as has Garrett. Garrett has gone over how to do research on things like legislative intent, regulatory intent, attorney general opinions, and researching the laws of other states. I went over searching the catalog, what databases are available to you and how to access them, how to go about interlibrary loan, and finally, how to ask us a question. Then I went through and tried to show you how to put all of these pieces together with Government Code 14901, looking at, okay, this is the history of that code section, how to search for secondary sources related to it, tracing legislative history, database checks, related regulations, and case law. At this point, I am going to open the floor up for questions. Does anyone have any questions for us?
There are quite a few questions waiting in the queue. And if we're moving right on, we can start to answer. Are you all ready?
Are we ready, Garrett?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay. All right. So I am actually going to tackle some of the low-hanging fruit here, some of the easier questions. First, we have a lot of people who are inquiring about whether the handout that you've made that we put in the webinar chat will be available online.
We are hoping to make that available online.
Perfect. Perfect. Also, the same kind of thing is, are the slides going to be available online? We typically do send them out afterwards, correct?
Yes, I am
Okay.
also hoping to get those online when we post links to this webinar. Give us a few weeks to get that posted, but I will be talking with our IT department about getting these available. So.
Okay. Fabulous. And then somebody asked, because you mentioned at the start of the webinar that we held other webinars on specific topics, are they available to the general public? Where are they found? And I can post the link to our YouTube channel, right?
Absolutely.
Let's do
They're
that.
all there.
Okay. I just posted that to everybody. Okay. And so I'm going to take a look at the ones that some folks indicated they wanted to take on. Garrett. Somebody asked if we can take pulled material out of the library and into our HQ locations.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that is collection dependent, honestly. Some of the resources that we were describing, specifically like primary, like California legislative or regulatory law, those things don't circulate. So they would be available to you in our reading room. Some of our treatises or secondary materials, more of those are circulating. It really just is item dependent.
Okay. And I interpreted that question maybe a little bit differently in terms
Oh,
of, okay, never mind. I thought one of the way I read into that is that if we discard materials that people can take. Like a lot of law libraries have materials that they discard and people grab them and take them to their offices. And we generally do not do that, as we are a historical repository and we have old versions of all practice guides. We've got quite a few materials. So I think your interpretation is the right one, Garrett. But in case anybody is curious, if you go into a public law library, there's typically shelves of materials that you can take or purchase, and we don't offer that service. So, okay. So next question, are regulations statement of reasons in rulemaking files or available elsewhere?
yeah, those are some of those resources that rarely are found in the notice registers. People do search the notice registers for a statement of reasons. More than likely, they're just going to be found in the complete rulemaking file, which should be at the agency or at the archives. There's not like a separate publication of just that resource, unfortunately. So you'd have to, if you don't find it in the notice registers, which is a very low percentage chance, you'd have to consult either the agency or the archives.
Okay, perfect. I have a question. Maybe Elena, you want to try this one? When you have a chance, could you tell us what is available at the Sutro Library?
Yeah, so I'm speaking generally because I've not worked at the Sutro Library, but generally speaking, they're going to have a very strong genealogical collection, especially for out-of-state genealogical materials. So if you're looking for your ancestors in North Dakota, they are a great resource for you. They are also going to have Adolf Sutro's old collection. So Adolf Sutro, as many of you know, was kind of a millionaire in San Francisco. And he had a huge book collection. He was one of those folks who went to town just buying books. I think the first college library of Mexico he bought. A portion of that collection got burned in the 1906 fire, but what survived went to the state library with the proviso that it needed to stay in San Francisco. So that's a little bit of the history of that particular branch and what it has.
Okay, thank you much. And so this is a very interesting and timely one. Do you recommend using AI to do any of the tedious aspects of examining multiple sources?
You find it tedious? So I personally, different people have different opinions. Whatever you do, you should be verifying your research, whether you are using AI to assist you or not. Verify what AI is telling you on that one.
Yeah.
Garrett, jump into that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would suggest that maybe if you're going to use AI or something that's interesting to use it kind of in your initial research and kind of exploratory research. If you're not quite certain what you need yet, or you need like a citation for a case law, those types of questions are good for it, but I would never use it to try to put together a legislative history or regulatory history. There's too many disconnected resources that I don't think it could pick up accurately everything that you would be looking for. But ultimately, if your research isn't as that demanding where you need every little thing, it's up to you. I would just be very wary of using it beyond initial stages.
I wholeheartedly agree. And somebody asked, what level of depository are you for briefs? What are the other three places that have a brief depository?
Yeah, we only receive published briefs, so we don't have unpublished things. You would have to, some things, even when they're not labeled as unpublished, we don't receive them. We do refer people back to the appellate or Supreme Court sometimes if they're looking for materials. The other three repositories are the San Diego Law Library, the LA Law Library, and the Bernard E. Witkin Law Library in Alameda. Same name, different city.
Okay, thank you. And let's see. So this is an interesting question. Who decides what goes on I'm assuming our website or just the state library's website? That is a very, very good, very kind of nebulous question. We definitely decide in terms of the Witkin State Law Library website. We help develop guides. We have a lot of innovative ideas, and sometimes we do run into constraints with our program and with our information technology department, our long-suffering information technology department. But if you have any suggestions of things that you would like to see on our website, please do not hesitate to reach out, because we want to know from you if there's any tool or anything we can do to make your lives easier and provide you with a better experience in accessing our services. So we can't guarantee we can pull it off, but we definitely want to hear about it. If you have anything else to add, Garrett or Elena.
No.
No.
Pretty
Okay.
thorough.
Okay, thanks. Um, all right. So specifically, how do you find the legislative history of a code section online? Is there a site where we can just input the code section?
There is not really, unless you're paying for it, unfortunately. The current California Legislative Information website will have, for any current California code section you go to, there will be typically a history note at the end of that section. It won't necessarily be complete. Even if, let me just share my screen real quick to give people an example of this. Okay, are we seeing this?
We are.
Okay, so if I click on this, just randomly clicked through to get to a code section, you'll see a note here. This says amended, which is your first clue that it's not a complete history. But what you can do is click on this cross-reference chaptered bills, and sometimes it gives you more legislative history. This time it doesn't. So what you'll need to do is consult an annotated code source, and that's either coming on site and checking our annotated code books, or it's also coming on site and using Westlaw to get the full history. But without that, they're just not available online. I'm sorry. I wish they were.
Okay, next question. Do you have access to letters or other communications submitted in support or opposed to proposed state legislation?
No, that's going to be a state archives thing.
Okay.
It should be looking at probably the governor's chapter bill files.
Okay. So next question. Does our online catalog, can you use Boolean search?
Oh, yes. Yes, you can. Advanced search is fantastic. Go to town.
Absolutely, yes. Okay, this is a pretty a gimme for you two. What are the benefits of having a library card, and how can I make the best use of it?
Garrett, take it away.
I think that we discussed like some of the resources that are available to you. If you have a library card, you can access Hein Online remotely, which opens up the amount of legal research you can do. There's huge amounts of primary law materials there at the state and federal level. There's journals, everything to that end. I'm trying to focus on things that folks could use. You can also with a library card, check out some of our current practice guides for limited amounts of time. It just gives you a little bit more leniency in how you access some of our materials. We do like to stress that everything that we offer is available to everyone if you can make it here. We know not everyone can, but it just opens up more access to our materials.
Correct, interlibrary loan becomes a possibility. Like Garrett said, database access of various sorts with your library card becomes a possibility. It's a huge resource that you should, if you are eligible, please sign up. It also helps us as far as offering these services to you, because our funders look at things like the number of library card holders we have in state government when they're looking at allocating money.
Right. And we have another library card question. I could probably answer it directly, but somebody received a virtual card, and is there a physical card? There is actually a very cool physical card that you can come on in and get, or maybe you can email us and we can send it to you. I think it has our historic library and courts building, and it's got some sort of like a visual effect on it. So yeah, absolutely. We love it. Okay, this one, Garrett. So any plans to convert your microfiche and microfilm files to digital? You are speaking our language.
Yeah, I think Elena mentioned the 2,000 feet of materials. funding dependent, but we do have a lot of work that just went into identifying collections for digitization. We also have some of that already underway on a smaller scale, but it is something that we are very focused on because we know that having these materials made more accessible only benefits, all citizens of California and beyond.
Great. Okay. Next question. Is there a federal Indian law section or any keywords to expedite exploratory searches?
So with this, I would suggest hitting the catalog. And yes, we do have a number of resources related to tribal law. So definitely start there, start looking at some secondary resources and start chasing some of the citations, I'm thinking.
I think that's great. I would like to say we also have extensive materials in our government publications collection and also in our California history collection, maybe not specifically to law, but probably definitely related if it's a bigger picture research inquiry. But yes, go ahead and do those searches and shoot us an Ask a Librarian and we can help you find more. And so somebody is asking about the mechanics of accessing Westlaw on site. Do people bring their laptops in or do we have computers to research on site?
We do have public access computers that you can use to access that database. So
Yes. And that's Westlaw is specifically only on our desktop computers in the library in Gillis Hall, correct?
correct.
And then CEB on law, you can access it also on the computers, but via your laptop as well. I think there's an IP kind of authentication where you can bring your laptop in and sit at any of our comfortable chairs and access CEB on law.
Our chairs are very comfortable.
Okay, and then I am seeing if there are any other questions that we have time to answer. How are we doing for time?
We still have probably 15 more minutes here.
Okay. So we have somebody who wants, so legal division has access to LexisNexis, but our analysts don't. Do you provide access for legal research? For example, a keyword search for all commission decisions on a particular subject.
Might be interested in looking at Westlaw for that one and seeing what might fall out there. If you are in the Sacramento area, you could come on in and do that keyword search on site and see what you can see with that resource. If you have someone, basically a friend who's in the Sacramento area, that becomes a strong possibility as well, not knowing quite where you're located.
And
Yeah.
oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
And we do have another question about, are the databases available to staff and faculty of the various sites of the University of California system?
That's going to be on-site access, again, to access those resources. So feel free to come on in and use them. We are thrilled to have you guys. And again, that's a case of if you have a friend in the area, we can also brainstorm access options that might be local to you, depending on where you're at. There's county law libraries all over the place that might provide some local access terminals as well. Do you have anything you want to add there, Garrett?
No, I think that's great.
Okay, next question. Since California Code of Regulations is available by way of Westlaw, and Westlaw is unavailable remotely due to how the contract is structured, is it possible for, say, prison law librarians to email or ask a librarian with legal reference questions for them to do a search in Westlaw so responses can be relayed to incarcerated patrons?
Anyone and everyone can use Ask a Librarian for any legal questions you have. Our answers will vary depending on the type of research that you're doing, because we can't really predict what your searches are, of course. But you can certainly shoot us an email via Ask a Librarian, and we'll do our best for you guys.
And as both Elena and Garrett said earlier, the more information, the more formed your research inquiry is, the easier it is for us. We do receive the most reference questions of any section at the California State Library, despite being one of the smaller sections at the California State Library. So our responses are really based upon the time that we have and the amount of questions that we have to get through. So the more you can help us with your craft your inquiry, the better. Um, so next question, how do we research for regulations concerning human diseases and supporting documents that were used to kind of frame those laws and those regulations?
Sure, yeah. Doing a more open-ended research into the regulations, I would suggest if you are accessing resources remotely, you can check Westlaw, which has access to the current California Code of Regulations. There's an option to do keyword searching. It'll pull up a list of regulations, and you can start your research that way. If you're on site, you can access Westlaw, and it'll have a little bit more detailed information. It won't be limited to just the current California Code of Regulations. You'll have a couple of decades that you can go back through. Also on site, once you've identified regulations you're interested in, you can do that regulatory history and intent research that we were talking about, find prior iterations of the regulation, look to find the notice registers, which may discuss why they're adding that regulation or amending it. And then for further documentation, you can go to the agency or the archives, which should have the complete rulemaking file, which would have potentially even more documentation that you're interested in. And a lot of those kind of questions were like, well, how would I find this? A lot of it is just going to be in the regulatory or legislative history, and finding the intent behind it that way. And that will point you to the most concrete information you could find.
Perfect. And so somebody asked about our collection development policy, whether it is available online. At this point, we are actually working on a committee that is revising and changing our collection development policy. And so once that committee kind of convenes and everything is approved, we will be putting it online. But if you have any specific questions or needs, don't hesitate to reach out via Ask a Librarian. Okay, so somebody asked about if you're a K-12 librarian, can you get a California State Library card? Unfortunately, you can't get a direct California State Library card. As Elena and Garrett have said, if you are on site, we can provide you with as many services as we could to any standard card holder. But also if you have interest in a particular title, we do have some great relationships with the public library system, and we have an interlibrary loan process in which, so I would go ahead and go to your local public library if you have interest in checking out a good majority of our collection. Okay. Question, how extensive is the Westlaw legislation history? Are there other resources you recommend searching in addition to the history provided on Westlaw?
Yeah, Westlaw will be an invaluable resource to obtain like the complete legislative history. Like I was demoing, they'll have a whole list of statutes from when a section was added through amended. They'll have notes about derivation and things like that as well. What they won't have necessarily are bill versions before a certain period. Off the top of my head, I don't know the date, but they probably have information back to the mid 90s, and then things get a little less complete. So that's why we list other resources where you can find bill versions, where you can find older file analyses and things of that nature, either on site here at the library or available through some other remote access.
Okay. And I have an interactive question for you. Garrett, if you wanted to try to take this on, would you be able to demonstrate how to find the bill number when searching only for the statute?
Oh, sure, yeah. Let me interpret this a little broadly just so I can show what resources. That's not what I want to share. Am I looking at the right screen?
It's your browser, Garrett.
Okay, perfect. Working with multiple screens here. Okay, so how would I find the bill number when searching only for the statute? Let's do a few things. Let's go to the Chief Clerk of the Assembly Archives. This is a list of all the statutes and amendments to the code back to 1850. Beautiful resource. I'm going to pick something not so deep into the 19th century so that I don't have to mess with any Roman numerals. 1930 sounds great. Let's 1929. So what I'm assuming is I have a statute citation that I got from a code section history, and say it pointed me to 1929. We'll see if this loads on screen. This will be fun. Say it's 1929, chapter 1. I'm going to go to the Chief Clerk of the Assembly Archives. I'm going to attempt to open this absolutely massive PDF, which contains all this beautiful information. And while that is happening, I'm also going to open up our research, our guide of the California statute to bill numbers. What this does is it allows you to not have to wait for that huge PDF to load. I could enter the year 1929, enter the
1920,
chapter.
Garrett.
19, oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Chapter 1, I'm gonna hit refine results. And what's going to happen here is it's going to list, because I didn't put an end year every year, but 1929, chapter 1, the bill number is going to be SB1. That tracks. Let's say we get a number that doesn't match, chapter 450 from 1929, Senate Bill 686. Anytime you get a statute number, you can come here for legislation from 1865. We'll get that updated to 2024 here immediately. And just punch in the year and the chapter number, and the bill number will be over here. I've got way too many things open. But let's see. Hey, this did load. So as I was saying, the statutes will have a table of laws enacted. Am I a liar immediately? Let's see. Yes, I believe so. But it's because sometimes I'm getting really granular now. Sometimes if you click on these, it'll take you specifically to files that contain only those things. Sometimes it takes you to one big document that has them all, and it's got a little signpost. What I'm looking for here is the table of laws enacted. A much smaller file, but no, I'm not interested in the propositions. A lot of this research is scrolling until you know what you're looking for. And here it is, the table of laws enacted. So as we saw, chapter 1 was Senate Bill 1. Chapter 450 was Senate Bill 686. So that's how you know our tool works. But obviously much easier than trying to find the right item to open from the Chief Clerk of the Assembly Archives and sort it out that way. It is fun, but the other way is much quicker.
We're getting pretty close to time here.
Yes, and we do have a few more specific questions about research assistance, and I will very much encourage you to use our Ask a Librarian, because this is our bread and butter. This is what we do best. And please email us and we will be happy to assist you with that question that you have. And yeah, I'm going to hand it back over to you, Elena. I think we got through a good majority of them. If we haven't, please feel free to ask a librarian and we can assist you.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Thank you, Kim, for doing such a fabulous job of hosting. And thank you, Vanessa, for doing a great job on the Q&A. Kim, do you have anything as far as closing out on us?
Yes, give me just a second. Oh, shoot, where's my share button? Hmm. Oh, there's my share. Sorry about that. All right. Thank you again to Garrett and Elena for their wonderful presentation. Thank you to Vanessa for monitoring our Q&A, and thank you all for attending. If you're ever in the area, please visit the State Library in person at 914 Capitol Mall in Sacramento, Monday through Friday from 9:30 a.m. to 4 o'clock p.m. Thank you all for attending and have a great afternoon.